Check, check, check. 1, 2. How is everybody today? Thank you for tuning in. I am Jimmy Ruffian, and this is the Rough Report live from downtown Toronto. If anybody has any questions or comments, be sure to leave them. I want to hear from you. I want to respond to you. All right. We're just about ready to get down to things here. All right. If you're with me, if you're ready to comment, say hello. I always like hearing from you. All right, once again, thank you for joining me. This is the Rough Report live, and I am Jimmy Ruffian, and we got some things to talk about today. I'm going to be covering a couple of topics, not, I guess, completely covering news stories as I usually do at the top of the show. Going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into some complicated and uncomfortable subjects that, for some reason, are still complicated and uncomfortable. You'd think, in our current year, that these things wouldn't be so difficult, but they evidently are. Talking about dynamics like racism and white privilege, and the various intersections that come with that. And how, society is affected by these things, how we talk about it, how we decouple it. And there's a couple figures that kind of around that I wanted to talk about as well. So I think one sort of tends to segue into the other in how I wanted to cover this. Sorry, I'm thirsty at the top of the show today. All right, so we're going to be talking about mainly Tim Pool, who is an online right-wing figure, as well as Steven Crowder, another online right-wing figure, two of which I, because of some of their particularly reactionary views or limited scope on certain subjects, I have a tendency to refer to them as fascistic. Now, that is not to say that they full-on believe in fascist theory as written by Mussolini or something like that, but fascistic in the sense of, believing in the far-right ideas that mechanize and allow fascism to happen. And I will get to explaining that. So, let's see here. I think I'm going to do, cover the Tim Pool stuff first. Let's see here. Yeah, there it is. All right, so Tim Pool recently had on his own podcast a fairly left-wing guy on to debate him, and it was one of the first times, I believe, that Tim Pool has had an actual, lefty guy, like somebody who describes themselves as a socialist, actually come onto his show and debate him. Or one of the few times it's happened. But then again, I'm not a super regular watcher of Tim Pool. Anything I find myself taking in of him is kind of problematic in all the ways that are going to be indicative here. So let me go back to the timestamp that I wanted to start on here. So yeah, he's debating another socialist YouTuber called bosch. And Vosh, for some reason, even in left-wing circles, is a bit of a lot of arguments about him. A lot of people who are lefties don't like him either. I can say I haven't watched a lot of his stuff either, but he does a very good job in a number of ways in this debate, where basically Tim Pool has a pretty large audience in terms of the right-wing people that watch him, and Vosh was successful in being able to get a lot of ideas out there that his audience wouldn't regularly get. As another lefty podcast / Twitter account here is going to point out, this is what he managed to do, essentially. Vosh has taught Tim Pool's audience the basics of critical race theory, material analysis, class antagonism, systemic racism, systemic poverty, the correlation of poverty and crime, and workers' cooperatives. Even Tim Pool seemed shocked to learn of some of these concepts, and which is, quite funny because Tim Pool espouses ideas or ideology that would say all of this stuff is false and bad, but as you're going to see in some cases, the stuff he's saying is false and bad, he doesn't even know how to define or what it is. And that's the problem with some of these guys in terms of how they talk, because they primarily reach an audience of younger people. And those younger people see these guys as kind of like the cool older dudes who are edgy and, are willing to say the things that other people are afraid to say because it might get canceled. And let me tell you something about cancel culture in that capacity. The online right has a way stronger presence than the online left in terms of YouTube views, Facebook views. Heck, Ben Shapiro completely about five-fold or 5 times over gets more views than CNN on Facebook in particular. So to say, cancel culture and shadow banning of the right is in the free speech of the right is under some sort of serious threat is it's just completely false. There's nothing that would support that data. Simple as that. Okay. Just checking in, making sure everything's good on the stream. Okay. Oop. Didn't want to do that one yet. Tim Pool. No. That's the one. That's the one I was trying to get to. Yeah, so you were going to see that he doesn't know about a lot of the stuff that he's apparently talking on. So yeah, the Surfs, great account and podcast. I definitely check them out. They did pretty good coverage of this particular debate as well. Let's see here. So yeah, I'm going to go to this debate. I'm going to start at about the 50-minute mark here. I mean, it is 4 hours long. I'm not going to do the whole thing like a tooth and comb sort of deal, but there's a few things I do want to point out. So hopefully it's not going to be as long as I think it is.
Sure.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I was playing it at like 1.5 speed. That will probably be really annoying for you guys to listen to, though. Go back a little bit. So this is Bosch that you see on the screen here. He remains really calm and polite and intelligent throughout this debate, and to Tim Pool's credit, he does as well. But yeah, I highly recommend watching this debate, especially if you are a fan of things that Tim Pool and Steven Crowder and right-wing voices like this espouse, because you are probably going to learn a thing or two. Because the thing about listening to those guys is they only present things through one sort of frame. And they like to talk like, oh, I'm just representing all ideas. And they have this sense of false neutrality about them. And that's what gets you wrapped up in that idea of, false idea of what free speech is and what kind of threat that it's under. It's a grift, really. And I think Bosch does a pretty good job at unveiling that grift.
It's that sort of stuff. But I think that like right now in this country, this is me like picking which two beautiful, delectable fruits I want to eat from a tree. If we could get UBI in this country done properly, like a good UBI, absolutely, and that would go a long way too to fixing the situation poor folk are in.
So we got two routes to go. I definitely want to talk about UBI, socialism, etc. But I want to make sure, because we were originally talking about Antifa and right-wing violence.
And that's why I wanted to start here, yeah, particularly about Antifa and protest and things like that. They kind of discuss that off and on, so I'm trying to skip to those parts.
So going back to what we were talking about before, with Antifa on the far left, we have people engaged in violence consistently. I mean,
if we look at the death count.
But what is death? I mean, death doesn't change the fact that someone gets bashed over the head with a brick.
Sure, but I think that generally speaking, if we're looking to quantify the amount of violence done by any given number of groups, the fact that we've had historic racial protests in this country with Antifa involvement at some of these protests, and I think we have one death, and it was that 100% Antifa guy who was in Portland, I believe.
Well, you had the security guard who shot the guy in the face.
That guy wasn't Antifa.
No, he was just a Bernie bro, but he was there. But he was there as an unofficial security guard.
Sure, but he wasn't operating the capacity of like a revolutionary protester. He was there, and I don't know the circumstance of the death, but he wasn't like Black Bloc. You have that, and the fact that there's only been so and so much death from these groups, I think, when we're looking at over the past 10 years, hundreds of deaths from the far right groups, indicates something. Whether that indicates the far right group uses more lethal methods,
Yes.
guns as opposed to bricks, I'd be willing to bet that. Antifa don't carry guns for the most part.
Except for that one guy.
Right, yeah, every once in a while, But when you see a far right militia group, these people are not carrying flags and bricks. These people carry firearms. But I think that ultimately, discussions on stochastic violence are distractions from greater systemic violence that I think that we all need to pay a greater level of attention
to. That's the point I wanted to highlight. Like kind of everything that they were saying before that, yeah, he's making good points about, how right-wing violence, statistically speaking, trumps left-wing violence. Like it just, there's almost no denying it, what the more violent and intolerant group is and what the dynamic is there in power, and how the media tends to react to it, who are the looters and who are not, so to speak. But like he says, all of that is kind of secondary. That's kind of aside from the point. It's about a greater systemic violence, a greater systemic issue than what happens at these protests in particular.
I think if you got the left and the right in a room and talked about the opioid crisis in pharmaceutical companies, they're gonna agree.
Yeah, I genuinely agree with that.
The problem for me is, man, these guys in Michigan, I don't care what you want to call them, lock them up. They're plotting a kidnapping, whatever it is. They're staking out some governor's house. The courts had already won in Michigan. The legislation ruled her powers. They stripped her powers from her. The courts ruled unconstitutional, and then the AG said, "I will not enforce any of her laws." And these guys were plotting for what reason? Like the system we built, it worked, and so these guys were nuts. They got caught. The FBI staked them out, locked them up. Congratulations. But when we look at Portland, when we look at Seattle, when we look at what happened in Chicago. In the Pacific Northwest, we get what is it, like 140 nights now. That's a bit unfair because it's simmered down quite a bit. But we had a sustained period of about 90 or so days where it was just riot every single night, explosives being thrown. And when these people would get arrested for doing things that were like serious, you know, like you had cops who had like burns, cuts, lesions. They would
a lot
get
of protesters who did too.
And well, for sure. But I mean,
yeah, interesting that, you know, Tim is only, like, again, he's you're about to see that he's only presenting things from one particular angle. Nothing but sympathy for the cops. You know, never mind the use of those less lethal weapons and the brutality that had unleashed upon people. And the footage of that, where that was unleashed upon people, and it was largely unprovoked. So it's interesting that, you know, Tim is only presenting things from exactly one side, while he describes himself as a centrist, or somebody who's perhaps not particularly conservative, as somebody who's very balanced. And it's a grift. And Vosh is about to get to that.
So I'll get to that. You have these people getting arrested, and then the DA, Mike Schmidt, says, you're free to go. So it was so bad, the state police said, what's the point of being here if they're getting released as soon as we arrest them? And they
That's
left.
a good question.
Well, Trump came in and deputized them, then later deputized the
Not
police, and now
really.
the feds are dealing with it. So death is the worst possible outcome. And we have Michael Reinl, who killed that Trump supporter, and that is extremely horrifying. And we didn't get mass national press coverage about it.
Wait, which instance is this?
Michael Reinl, the guy in Portland who said, we got him right here, and then he
Shot
fired
him,
two
yeah.
shots.
We don't know if it's horrifying because he never lived to see trial. He was murked by
That's
Trump.
no, it was definitely horrifying, and it was definitely horrifying that he got killed.
Death is horrifying, but I mean, like, we didn't even get to see a trial there. Like,
You're right.
And
Yeah.
that's something that the right doesn't really experience, by the way, too. You know, you have like Fort Hood, for example. You know, you treat these people with kid gloves, but that guy outside the house, apparently, according to like a bunch of eyewitness testimony and the conflicting narratives of the police who were there, he didn't draw a gun. They just saw him.
Well, I'll tell you this: there's
shot him.
conflicting witness statements.
But only with minor variations. The vast majority affirm that the cop story isn't true. That he did not draw.
I read that there was a witness who said they saw him drawing. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter. You know why? Because even if we have witnesses saying he did and he didn't, Trump said twice. Oh, he was at a rally and he goes, they knew who he was. It took him 15 minutes. They didn't want to arrest him.
Retribution.
And the other time he said it was retribution, and that's messed up. I'm trying to avoid swearing.
No, I saw you tweet that, by the way. When I saw it, I was very
yeah,
happy to see that.
the president claiming that we should just get retribution and go kill
Nonsense.
people. No,
That's
we
craziness.
want that guy on trial so we can hear everything about him and make sure we know who he is, we know what he's doing, we know why he's doing it.
To me, it shows to an extent fear as well. If you are confident in your case, legally speaking, you want them to stand trial because a trial is a years-long, prolonged shaming of them and everything
Yes.
they represent.
Right.
Whereas them being murdered, martyrized them, the only reason you wouldn't want that is if you were concerned that a trial would bring out information.
I think
or
I'm
would be
about
inconvenient to you in
past
some
the
way.
point.
That's why, look, I think I'm not a big fan of trusting the government, but we've got a
me
couple
too.
we got a couple statements, and it just seems like inconclusive.
You know, like, and that's another thing about these, because I'm not a big fan of trusting government, but like, there's tons of aspects about government that they trust. It just depends on what kind of government it is and what sort of action that they're taking. It's one of those like kind of general statements that just sounds like something that you should believe, but there's no meat behind it. I don't believe in generally trusting the government. It's like, well, in what capacity? Anyway.
I mean,
I'm not inherently going to distrust the cops who were there. I'm not inherently going to trust them either.
inconclusive is the best you can ever get when it comes to conflicting witness testimonies.
Well,
I mean,
so to my point,
Mhm.
just because sometimes one group of extremists kills people doesn't mean we ignore the other group of extremists.
oh, I'm not arguing that. Though
But
I
what-
will defend a lot of the protest violence that's been taking place. I know, and this is contended among a lot of conservative circles, but I think an economist recently estimated that the damage done to the black community in this country could be monetarily represented by a figure of like
Okay. They're kind of getting to the thing. I think it was about 110 where they kind of around to the next point I wanted to highlight.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's totally fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with
No,
being
no.
black. There is something wrong with being an Infowars reporter. So I'm fine
So
with the respective
The,
levels.
the
of
point I'm bringing out
condemnation.
is this vile hatred exists. Like,
but that's
overwhelmingly
fine.
Here, I'm gonna go back up.
disgusting
Hold on.
insults. And dude, and this Infowars reporter is like, come with me to this line of Trump people coming to a Trump rally. And he was like, oh, okay, I guess, you know, I was kind of worried. And everyone there is like, he says, I don't like Trump. I'm not a big fan. They're like, hey man, that's cool. No problem. Shook his hand, gave him hugs. Some ladies were like, oh, that's fine. We just love that you're here talking to us. Gave him a kiss on the cheek. And this guy's like, man, I get more of those. I'm going to come hang out here. This is great. And then she goes, now let's go over to the protest side. And they start screaming vile, disgusting insults. And the guy's face just drops like
random black guy.
it was. So I don't know the exact context of who this guy was, but he was talking to a reporter from Infowars.
Well, they might have been screaming at the. I can.
They were screaming at the Infowars lady.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's totally fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with
No,
being
no.
black. There is something wrong with being an Infowars reporter. So I'm fine
So
with the respective
the-
levels.
the
There
point
we
I'm
go.
bringing
Okay,
out
that was the
is
context
this
of that.
vile hatred exists. Like,
But that's
overwhelmingly.
fine. Shouting at people you don't like is fine. That's
no, but I'm just giving that as an example to talk about if I were to go out right now to a Trump rally, there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna be. If I said I don't like Trump, that's fine. In fact, I called Trump a very disparaging term on Twitter, laughing about it, and I've done it like 10 times in the past 2 weeks. And people are just like, I disagree with you, Tim, but you know, I respect that you're giving us your thoughts on this one and you're treating the news seriously. If I went out in I think it was 2017 or 2018. I think it was 2017. It was in Berkeley. Antifa was posting pictures of my mom, like, and me, and threatening me. And I went to a skate park, minding my own business, and I had guys come to me and start threatening me for no reason.
So I can't defend all these individual. Obviously, I think going after people's family members is unconscionable, regardless of the people you're targeting. You know, I can't. I mean, these are.
Yeah,
very
that
spread
never
out.
happens on the
broad
right.
argument that I'm making is I genuinely do believe
Okay.
that the sentiment behind Black Lives Matter is about the things they're protesting for and not the defense of the most violent, extreme, hyperbolized actions that take place in a movement that tens of millions have participated in.
$2 billion in damages.
I mean,
And that was just the insurance cap.
yeah.
So beyond that, it's way
But
more.
what do
In
you want?
fact,
But what do you want to do about it?
condemn it, call it out, and say stop.
But
Yeah.
people, but I guess, I mean, I'm in some pretty far left circles. I think that what I remember is this: after George Floyd and after the Minneapolis riots, there were a lot of people who were very gung ho about the rioting. And just a couple of weeks later, I remember there was a live stream segment from a far right. I don't know if it was a YouTuber, Twitch streamer. I think he was a neo-Nazi. The chat on screen had a lot of wacky stuff in it, and he was there at a BLM protest. And he was saying, "Hey, you guys, can you flip that truck?" And he was trying to get other people to flip. And the people who were there, who were BLM protesters, all turned on him. They were like, "No, what? Do you, absolutely not!"
Right.
And they started like trying to chase him out. The guy ran away, and chat was like, "Oh, gotta run!" And when I saw that clip, that made its way around the Twitter, the YouTubes, and people were celebrating it because the goal
For sure.
of protests should always be to affect positive change, and you aren't going to affect positive change with the looting, the burning, the rioting. Those things do happen, but an overfixation can be detrimental to the actual message being made by the vast majority.
There's a video of
And yeah, that's the thing. Like, in by and large, most of those protests weren't riots. They weren't violent. And even then, when the violence happened, a lot of the time it was antagonized by the authorities. You could see the footage of that. It was antagonized by outside actors who wanted to see it escalate. Like that guy who was trying to encourage people to flip a truck. You know, but by and large, most of the protests that went down were peaceful. And even then, to dismiss the validity of protest when it goes violent is to deny the whole idea of fighting against government tyranny. When you're pushed into a corner so much that you're starting to lash out, and then because you're lashing out, the authority cracks down even harder. Now the violence escalates. Now you have a open conflict between citizens and authority. this is an unfortunate natural progression of these conflicts, because for some reason after all this time it still is a conflict. The authorities have done nothing to properly address it. So what are you going to do? As Martin Luther King said, rioting is the language of the unheard. If you're not listening, people tend to lash out. But how the media and how people like Tim Pool react to it is very much dependent on who the ones lashing out are and why. And I would admit that I'm no exception to that. If it's right-wing people lashing out, I'm going to have more negative things to say about it without a doubt. But I can argue for those outcomes. Tim Pool cannot. He is trying to drag this into a discussion of some sort of like bullshit morality that the second you start lashing out a little too much, your message is now irrelevant. And I'm afraid to say that's not the case. Self-defense against a tyrannical authority is self-defense.
Some guy with a hammer and he's smashing up the sidewalk and like pulling bricks.
Yeah.
And have you seen this? They run up,
I've seen that.
they grab the guy and they throw him to the cops. And then the cops grabbed two guys, and one of the guys was actually helping.
Where was
and then
the
they cut
thing I
the
wanted?
good guy out, and they arrest the guy who was vandalizing the street. So I definitely praise that. By all means, like peaceful protest is what this is the foundation of this country. We have the First Amendment right to do so, and it's amazing when
Actually, very violent protest is the foundation of the United States. If you want to like actually get real and dig deep. I mean, you had a revolutionary war to depart yourselves from the British. Like, what else do you want? You had a civil war, mostly to get rid of slavery. Yeah, the entire history of the United States is entrenched in violence. I don't know what he's thinking there.
we do.
Violent protest is the foundation of this country.
Technically, but you know,
There you go.
when we told the Crown, you know, the American colonists, stop oppressing us, stop sleeping in our homes, stop murdering our people, and they didn't live here. They were from, you know, like you had people who were born and raised in the colonies. What did they say? They said, we're severing ties from you. So what did the Crown do? They sent the regulars to the States, and then we said, F off. So it's a bit different than a bunch of people showing up, you know, an extreme minority of a community that is at odds with what the community wants, burning it down, getting defended by the press, and then just only get.
Whoa! Did you catch that just there? Let me hear how he phrased that again. This is bad sounding. Is it when it first hit my ears?
So what did the Crown do? They sent the regulars to the States, and then we said F off. So it's a bit different than a bunch of people showing up, you know, an extreme minority of a community that is at odds with what the community wants, burning it.
An extreme minority of the community at odds with what the community wants, burning it down. Something about that doesn't sound really accurate. But I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding the context.
Down, getting defended by the press, and then just only getting like, well, let's not focus on the extremists.
I think that's a really sensationalized narrative because we are focusing on the extremes here. So we have to remember we're focusing on a very slim minority, probably exclusively, you know, stuff that's gone on in New York, Portland. There are cities, of course, that have greater levels of agitation.
No.
just based on the
I'm going
demographic.
to skip again a couple minutes here.
And it was reported that the government, the prosecutor, actually took the gun and dismantled it and reassembled it and then accused them of tampering.
I can't speak to the specificity of these claims. This almost, I don't know if this borders on conspiracy, but I'd have to look more into it. If they're innocent, the courts will find in their favor. They are very wealthy. I have no doubt they're going to get a good lawyer.
Well, they're good lawyers, I guess, themselves.
Oh, right, true.
I
True,
shouldn't
yeah.
say they're good lawyers. I say they're wealthy lawyers. You know.
Right. Well, they can't represent themselves, of course. But
So I guess the issue is we have widespread rioting. It's consistent and it's sustained. So we have
not as sustained as the systemic biases they're fighting against, though.
But what systemic biases?
Bam.
I mean, all the stuff
Did
regarding
you-
class and race that has led to these conditions boiling up here. I guess
Tim-
it really just is a matter of like, what do you think the solution to this is? Is it
Class-based.
right? But is it
Yeah.
like arresting a given number of people and replacing some left-leaning DAs, or is it like we fix this like from the ground up? You know?
I think the first thing that needs to happen is acknowledgement and condemnation, which is what we're not getting from the media.
I think we have, and even by the
But
way,
they're just saying peaceful protests over and over again with the flames
Yeah,
behind
what
it.
are
but
they
that's,
I
that
know
was
it's.
one,
I know.
Yeah,
I
but
know.
you're doing it now. You're like, well, there was one. For the most part, the protests are peaceful. So calling them peaceful protests is an accurate and factually
No.
verifiable description.
There, I went through this today. They were calling what happened in Philadelphia demonstrations. Like every outlet I read was like demonstrations took place and a pickup truck rammed a cop, knocking her to the ground and breaking her
I
leg.
think
I'm
you
like,
got to acknowledge CNN's crap,
But wait, weren't they demonstrations?
MSNBC.
no. When people
and
are
just
going around smashing
admit it
windows
to
and
yourself,
stealing
Tim.
things from all of these stores, that's not a
Was
demonstration.
that the whole? What wasn't there like a large?
See, and that's the entire thing. If you can get a small group of the people, or even an antagonizer from the outside, to start smashing windows in Tim Pool's tiny little lizard brain, the second that happens, whatever you're protesting over is illegitimate. Suddenly you shouldn't be on those people's sides. Whatever they're arguing for is suddenly forgotten and disappears, and we have to be worried about a few broken windows now, not the fact that people have been experiencing racism for countless generations. It's bonkers. Kudos to Vosh for staying calm here, because I think it's not so much like he found himself arguing with Tim. It was that he was educating Tim's audience.
Large portion
They were
of that
calling that a demonstration. The media doesn't say
They don't
rioters.
call it riots ever.
They don't ever call it a riot.
well, I
I mean,
know
conservative
for a
outlets
fa-
will.
I know
Yeah,
for a
they
fact
do.
That's not true. I've seen even
That is, yeah, Vosh is absolutely correct there. That is 100% not true. The media portrayed those events in all sorts of negative ways that were completely biased.
ruler neutral outlets that have referred to these as riots.
Who?
as a
Right,
result.
sometimes,
Well, I can't-
perhaps.
I mean,
Who
I
was
can't.
that?
I'll
Yeah.
I'll say this. I don't think either of us have an example, but I'm willing to concede yes, absolutely. But I'm just being hyperbolic.
I'm
in
willing
that
to
for the most
concede.
part, they overwhelmingly say demonstration, and every time I read,
But
one of
that's
these
mostly
stories,
what they
I'm
are,
like,
Tim.
Dude throwing a brick at the head of a cop is not a demonstrator
Now,
or
here-
a protester.
Here's where I have to turn this on you, okay? So I assume you and I have similar goals when it comes to Clevitt with regards to how the right miscovers these.
How many
Because
views does the right get?
Views?
Like how big is right wing media versus left wing media?
The right wing, at least on YouTube, the right wing media is absolutely larger.
Have you
or
looked at the
equivalent.
actual data on that?
Noticeably larger.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
half.
if you, I mean, it depends on what your metric is for left leaning. There are some like neutral leaning. Like I don't consider CNN to be left by any metric, for example. but
They're
some people throw it in.
anti-Trump, and
I think-
Cuomo specifically said, "Since when do protests have to be peaceful?"
I think that well, that's a true statement. There have
So,
been
I mean,
many
that's definitely
non-peaceful.
left.
No, there have been plenty of non-peaceful.
Wait. That's definitely left. The concept of non-peaceful protest is specifically a left one. Really? Like it's just plain disingenuous bullshit. Welcome to the program, Anthony. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, we're just watching a debate here and kind of critiquing a debate on Vosh and Tim Pool. Tim Pool has some mixed up ideas about race relations that I feel maybe some of my viewers could benefit listening to Vosh and some of my points about.
Protests, some of them led by right-leaning people in the history of this country. Protest does not inherently mean peaceful, and also
The point I'm making there is that he's clearly on the side of the unrest.
I don't think being anti-Trump makes you left-leaning. I think that just makes you a fan of human decency and life on this planet.
In terms of how the media covers
No shit.
what's going on,
But
CNN's on clearly one side.
I think that CNN is at best neutral. They are absolutely not on my side. But when it comes to this,
Yeah.
again,
That's the one thing anybody who might have any confusion there has to realize, that CNN being anti-Trump is not a leftist position. It's not even a particularly liberal one, or or like center left. It's just not far right, maybe. It's about it.
You have an enormous media platform. We have people like the President of the United States saying that Black Lives Matter people, they aren't American, they hate America, they want to destroy it. This is up to the presidency of the United States. Right-leaning media, you think the left-leaning media has been inaccurate in their coverage of these issues. The right-leaning media is insane
Bosch.
when it comes
But
to talking
who
about
and
this.
what?
Sorry, I just had a quick question.
Huh?
So I really wanted to ask you. One of the things that you mentioned was that you did not like Michael Tracy's coverage of these small cities.
Mhm.
And I kind of wanted to loop back a little bit because we are still talking about riots and we're going to go to super chats, maybe eventually. And I wanted to ask, what was your issue with Michael Tracy's coverage and why?
It has led to damage in some small communities, or that the right wing with arguments that would support their ideas.
A press conference was removed immediately from YouTube.
I would
Sorry,
consider you
trying to-
far right, and you have 110 million views.
Far
per month.
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like talking to you. Don't get me wrong. The actual stuff that you do on your channel, though, is
There's a huge difference between being center left and being left. It's a huge difference. Like center left might be, Medicare for all, or our current social system as we have it in Canada in terms of medical coverage. But it's definitely not full on. There's certainly many parts of our medical care that we need to pay for, such as dental, optical. So yeah, there are important degrees to these things. When I say center left, I'm definitely like leading with the word center.
hyper partisan, like almost conspiracy bait. Like
what?
Like there was the clip you did where you said that if Joe Biden wins, they're going to rewrite all the definitions in your dictionary. People are going to come to your house with fireworks and guns. It's all
Like,
gonna be
come
over.
on.
Those
Which
things
is-
have already
yeah.
happened.
People, first of all, bad things have happened to people on the left and the right. Second of all, this has nothing to do with Biden winning. This all happened under Trump, under protest that Trump has exacerbated with his poor response. And third of all, don't you think it's a little bit disingenuous of you to imply that just because something has happened at some point in this country, that means that it's the product of an upcoming presidential election? Like, at some point over the past 4 years, you know, there's probably been like a sewer explosion in somebody's
where
toilet
was
in an
that?
apartment. But if I said,
Carlson gave a list of all of these things that were happening. Trump saw it, reacted, didn't know what he was
but
talking
do we have
about.
information outside of Christopher Rufo's
Sure
like
we do.
testimony?
Yeah.
We have the articles and the documents and everything, all the research he's done.
Okay, so
So,
wait.
so look, this is just
Element of critical theory. That is to say,
Okay,
analyze racial
there we go. That's the part I was looking for. It's like, when the hell are they going to get to that part? My whole timeline of this was thrown off by the fact that I was watching it at 1.5 speed earlier. Anthony, I don't know how to tell you that. Okay, I'll just read it out loud for the folks who aren't on YouTube. Okay, so to my point about what I was saying about being left and center left. Anthony responds, it means that you are more left than center and way more left than right wing, which means that those ideals are more likely to go left than anywhere close to right. I don't know what foundation that idea of political theory is built upon, Anthony. But it's I just don't know. That's something. Much nuance, my friend. I'm not sure what that point was supposed to be. I really
for the future, 2.5 kids and all of those things.
You're just listing the one Smithsonian Museum pamphlet that was passed out and largely criticized.
Okay. So let me get to the beginning of that conversation. This is kind of one of the more important points in here.
Minorities white traits of whiteness would be specifically like hard work.
I don't
schedule, and
care who it
I'll
is.
tell you. I'll tell you this: the tenets of critical race theory.
You're commenting under the same account. I don't care who it is.
Though I've definitely done segments on the overt academic definition of it, I don't have it pulled up. But when they put out a list that says
I don't have the
whiteness,
academic definition.
they say things like down with whiteness. Traits of whiteness include schedules, hard work, planning for the future, 2.5 kids, and all of those things.
You're just listening.
So, just to be clear, Tim read that pamphlet that was obviously exclusive to a far right-wing source. Didn't read anything else about it. Like, took those points as if they were written down completely seriously and then believed them without, like, further critical analysis. And that's what he's using as his defense against critical race theory. Yeah.
The one Smithsonian Museum pamphlet that was passed out and largely criticized. Critical race theory.
Criticized by who? It was in the Smithsonian for decades.
That specific pamphlet, no, it was not. This pamphlet you're referring to right now, I know because I covered on my stream and made fun of it as well. No, it was made specifically, probably some new int student or somebody who was in their 20s made it. It got taken away almost immediately afterwards following bad reception. To pretend that this is indicative of an entire academic theory is very silly. I learned critical race theory in sociology. That was my major. It's very, very simple. Critical race theory is just the racialized element of critical theory. That is to say, you analyze racial relations based on distinctive power relationships between different groups.
So how about instead, I guess, the application of? That's probably the best way to put it.
There is something terrifyingly despotic about banning the teaching of a certain idea because it leads people to conclusions that are unfavorable to the President of the United States of America.
Yeah, that's the like entire thing of it right there. You literally opened this conversation with, "Hey, what's up? It's Anthony." Figure maybe John is a middle name or something. You're already like, what is he? You've been here for a couple minutes and you're already like just unbearably dense. Hope you're in it for the long haul here, buddy. So yeah, as was being discussed by Bosch and Tim Poole there, Tim did not know or have a concept for the definition of what critical race theory was. He just knew the negative connotations that it meant for his political ideology, but he lacked the concept on what it actually is. So it's like, oh, okay, it's, as he just tried to like deflect to right there, once Vosh corrected him on what the definition is, and he's like, okay, maybe the problem is then its application, is then how it's applied. And like, yeah, he's just grasping at straws. He doesn't have a concept for why we're at where we're at in terms of race relations, probably because he has a limited idea of what critical race theory is. That's incredibly adorable, Anthony. Right-wing YouTubers like Ben Shapiro get way more views than CNN because they don't make up news stories. I have some incredible news for you about Ben Shapiro. That really explains a lot about the conversation that was had earlier that brought me to think, we got to talk about race on this show. Because there's obviously a couple of idiots that are super hungry to put themselves out there about it. It just explains so much, that attitude right there. Thank you so much for that. Marvelous. I wouldn't have complete trust in CNN in terms of how they present things. Very few actual people who give a damn would. But let me tell you, I've watched enough hours of Ben Shapiro that he, like our friend Timmy here, would not be able to define the very things that he claims to critique. And so, like you are, Anthony Adam John. Like you, I'm sure you're a singular person, whatever. Yeah, who can't seem to define what left and center left is, and have a very limited understanding of what the political compass is, and how wide the spectrum is, and what the various things that make it tick, so to speak, are. So yeah, it's quite funny to me. Yeah, but I'm sorry, if you listen to Ben Shapiro, like sincerely listen to him and take what he says at face value without critical analysis, you are going to be led astray. Ben, in case you didn't notice, doesn't debate left-wingers. He doesn't go on their shows. He runs from them. Because much like Steven Crowder, if he had to face anyone that was above the age of 21 and had the language and experience to articulate themselves, they wouldn't get very far. There's a reason why there's a pattern of this. To Tim Pool's credit, he can have Bosch on his show and, remain polite and calm as he's being completely stomped and corrected the entire time. At least he has the guts to do that. Ben Shapiro, on the other hand. Oh, man. That's just hilarious. At all of his events, he has serious left-wingers come on and debate him, huh? Yeah, okay. Name one. Name one.
I think you're now ascribing an assumption on the intent. What I'm saying is,
why is it good that it's banned then?
well, the first assumption you made was exactly why.
Just to put in context, why is it good that it's banned? The concept of critical race theory being taught. So the very people who want to stand up for free speech should be extremely concerned that a far-right figure wants to remove an idea from the public lexicon. I don't care. I just see Adam and John. It looks the same. I don't care. You're espousing the same things. You're here for the same reason. I don't care. I don't intend on changing your mind. I intend on very much being demonstrative of the fact that the things you believe in are stupid. And you'll hopefully, as you develop, you will realize that. But anyway, I got to the main point of that video, and the whole concept there was talking about things that he doesn't understand. So let's talk about Steven Crowder. YouTube suspends comedian Steven Crowder over backlash over racist, homophobic show. Steven Crowder spent a good portion last year particularly going after a Vox reporter, Carlos Maza, by targeting him for being gay, targeting him for being Latino, and saying and doing racist and homophobic things. So much so that even YouTube suspended him. YouTube is still host to a slew of much more problematic people. But it got bad enough for Steven Crowder that his show got temporarily banned, mind you. So yeah, let's take a look at, I had this clip. Yeah, here we go. Here is the whole concept of white fragility on display, and why currently we have Adam, John, Anthony, Adam, John, in the comments section here, having a little fit, because when you talk about these things in a serious way, you have to come to some confrontations about your assumptions about the world and what that means and the effect that it has. And in some of our lizard brains, where it's very fight or flight, we get set off. And as a result of being set off, we get really defensive. We get really deflective. And we try to say, what about this? What about that? Or say snarky and edgy things that we think are clever, but actually have nothing to do with the point. And, you know, that's what you do. That's white fragility on display. That's not coming to terms with certain assumptions about the world and how you've been affected by them and how you carrying that on affects others. But anyway, here is a clip where Steven Crowder is walking around Dallas in the riot destruction. And basically just trying to antagonize people, because that's what Steven Crowder does. So he has this artist on the street that he's talking to, and yeah, let's see how this goes down.
No, we're not talking about. We're not talking about.
Oh yeah, I gotta go back a few seconds. Yeah. Give me a second here. There we go.
Yeah. Go home.
Don't be
Go
racist.
Home. Don't come out here and pretend in front of your friends because
Yeah.
y'all grouped up and it's 5 white people and y'all want to sit around and talk about black people because they are in a group
No,
now.
I'm just asking you. I think
Don't
it's
be
good
like
art.
that. Don't be biased.
Well, I'm
don't
not
be a
how
don't
have I
be a
been biased?
mob. I'm just saying. I don't know if it's you, but it could be you. You got the same skin
Well, I don't know
tone
if
as
you
the rest
looted,
of
but
them.
it could be you. But I'm
Hey,
assuming it's
but
not.
we're not here talking about that though. We talking about
No,
what
I
the
am.
problem is. No, we're not
I
talking
think the
about.
problem
We're
is
not talking
rioting
about
and
is
looting.
Gabriel Lu-
We're talking about what the problem is, and like it's Steven Crowder that's asking this guy questions. It's Steven Crowder that's gone up to him and challenged him to say something. And the second this guy starts speaking any truth, Steven Crowder is going to attempt to interrupt him over and over again and talk over him. And he's already done it a couple times in this clip. I'll go back a few more seconds just to demonstrate that. What he's talking, they're talking about when he says, when the gentleman on the left there, when he is saying we're talking about the problem at hand, he's talking about systemic racism.
you, but it could be you. You got the same skin
Well, I don't know
tone
if
as
you
the rest
looted,
of
but
them.
it could be you. But I'm
Hey,
assuming it's
but
not.
we're not here talking about that though. We talking about
No,
what
I
the
am.
problem is. No, we're not
I
talking
think the
about.
problem
We're not
is
talking
rioting
about
and
is
looting.
Gabriel looted.
Yeah, I think
Did
that's
you
a
ask
problem.
me is Gabriel looted? Did you ask
Is your
me?
name Gabriel?
Did you ask me is Gabriel looted?
Do you mean like
No,
Archangel,
you did not.
Great
you never
Gabriel?
asked me is Gabriel looted. So that's not what we talking about. What we talking about
I'm
is
talking
how
about-
do we hold accountability? How
Yeah.
do we hold accountability as a nation? That's what's important because that's what's going on. Just like I said, every time your people call the
Whoa,
police,
that's pretty racist. Don't be racist.
bro,
Don't
that's
say
not
your
racist.
people.
I'm gonna tell you what it
What
is.
if I said
He just interrupted this guy to make a really glib, sarcastic, "Oh, don't say you people." What a fucking wiener. "Oh, don't say you people. That's racist." Oh, got him with the real friggin' zinger there. Oh my God. look, taking this guy seriously, really, you can't really question why other people wouldn't take you seriously. It's just hilarious. Like, he is sincerely saying to this guy, this black man, in the middle of all of this that's going down, as he's painting a portrait of his friend that was murdered by police. And Steven Crowder is pulling this shit where he's like, oh, don't be racist, with this like disingenuous, sarcastic bullshit. If somebody just ran up behind him and kind of like stabbed him a couple times, I almost couldn't blame them. It's like he has the target painted on his back. Like, please stab me. I'm such an ignorant putz. And he's going to continue to interrupt him. And it's going to escalate.
Your people and
I'm
said you're
waiting
all
for you to get done
criminals.
talking.
That's terrible.
What that is, that's a fact.
My
They ain't
people
no
what?
racist.
White people
Your
what?
people is the one who's calling the police saying black people. That's not a
I don't
racist.
call the police and
Listen
say
to
black
me,
people
listen
unless a
to
black
me.
person commits a
Stop
crime.
talking for a second. You came to record me.
I was
So
asking
stop
about your
talking.
art.
Stop talking for a second.
Well, no, I'm asking you a question.
No,
You
I
say
know.
you
Stop
people.
talking. You
I don't
can't
think
even
that
stop
that's
talking.
racist.
You're not even humble enough to stop talking. How you?
And that's exactly it. There isn't a humble bone in Steven Crowder's body. He is just so pumped up with his own head up his ass privilege that he has no concept for what this guy is trying to say to him. Like, zero. He's just like completely out to lunch here. I have viewers on other platforms, guys. That's why I specified before, for those of you who aren't on YouTube. Jessica typically watches on Facebook. I guess she wanted to join the fun in the conversation. Thank you, Jessica. Well, I believe what you have here between Anthony, John, Sam, Adam, Sam, Anthony, John, Sad, is a teenage boy and his father, if I'm not mistaken. That's the crowd that we've gotten here today. Of course, the teenage boy is a big fan of Steven Crowder, I believe, which, you know, is quite typical. When Steven Crowder goes on and does these edgy things and does the gay lisp voice, like, oh, to make fun of the gays, you know, the, you know, prepubescent boys think that's real edgy and hilarious. And that's no different than it was 20 years ago when I was growing up through it. And, you know, they just think it's real funny. And then in a few years, they'll probably have some very large personal revelations that will have them thinking very differently. And maybe even affect their relationship with their parents. So anyway, Steven Crowder, being the giant man-child that he is, putting it on display loudly for all of us to see, he cannot handle this conversation because he's like, oh, you're talking about white people, you're being racist. But here's the thing about critical race theory. Here's the thing about talking about the dynamics of racism. You have to talk about race. It might make you uncomfortable. It might make you sad. It might make you lash out. It might make you get your back up and say things that are just really bonkers in a live stream chat. Yeah. And then you do all sorts of things like project like, oh, you're the upset one. You're the snowflake. I don't have a problem here. But because of a single Facebook thread, a father and son are now having a conversation, in my YouTube chat. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm the real upset one. It's just mighty interesting. Is all I'm trying to show here. That's all. Just a little bit interesting. And let's watch Steven Crowder continue to get very upset when he has no stake in this game whatsoever outside of just wanting to be right in front of the camera. He doesn't care about racism. He doesn't care about the issues. He doesn't care about the rioting. He cares about looking superior on the camera. And the second that's under any threat, he's going to behave like a big baby.
Go ahead,
come
sir.
To ask black people about what they're going through, but you can't even humble yourself to stop talking.
You've talked most of the
And
time.
you want to waste my time?
I'm not. I want to know what should we do?
Listen.
I'm listening.
Listen.
Yeah.
Your people, when they call the police
White
on our
people.
people.
White
yes.
people.
When the
Okay.
white skin complexion call the police on the black skin complexion, they say black people.
Yeah.
So that means that nations need
Some
to
people do.
And that's not a racist
But not all
comment.
white people.
Some
Just
people
listen,
do.
man. Stop interrupting me, please.
Well, you just said you people.
Stop interrupting me, please.
Go ahead.
He's
Your
going to interrupt
people,
him
white
again.
People is what I said.
Right.
And that's not a racist comment. That's a fact.
You
Because that's
said-
what. Stop. Don't
No,
interrupt
no,
me.
but you're wrong. You're
Don't
saying
He just can't help himself, right? Like, and notice that again, he's not speaking to a youngster here. He's not speaking to somebody who's a freshman in college. He's speaking to a man that has lived experience and a bit more confidence in what he's saying and knows how to stand up to a smug person like Steven Crowder.
racist shit,
Don't
man.
interrupt me.
You
Don't-
can't say you people do
This-
and then
this-
say not all white people are the same,
Hey,
just
this
like not all
interview's
black people are
over.
the same. Not all white people are the
done
same, just like
talking.
not all black people are
I'm
the
done
same.
talking.
Does the owner know that you're doing this? Did you talk with him about it? Is it?
You see that? The second he said, "You know what? You keep on interrupting me. I'm not talking to you anymore." He tries to antagonize him further. Hey, are you doing graffiti there? This guy, if he just turned around and clocked him one, it would be doing everyone a favor.
Is this art or graffiti?
Is this art or graffiti?
Okay. Is it art or is this your business?
Bro, thank you, bro.
Is this your business?
Thank you, bro.
It's not your business?
The interview is over. I'm gonna start recording. You keep harassing.
Is this a business?
me. Yeah.
Is it your business? Okay. Let's have someone
Steven Crowder
call the police
is a
about
giant,
if it's
giant
to find out
baby.
if it's a business.
Let's find out if this is a business.
No, he's not.
He's just gone full Karen.
Maybe the business
He's
owner
full
is fine.
Karen. I can see the Karen hair starting to form around Steven Crowder's skull. Oh man. Oh man. Have you ever seen such a schmuck? Oh God, I love covering this guy. There actually was that one debate that Steven Crowder did have with some like young college guy, and the guy actually did really well. He said a couple like really kind of silly and off base things, but again, young people, they do things like that. I certainly know I did. But all in all, he handled himself pretty well, and I think ultimately kind of made him look pretty foolish. I wish I could Yosef, I think the kid's name. If you search Steven Crowder Yusef or something like that, I think you'll find that. But oh man, this clip here is just like it's ultimate just right-wing failure, not being able to acknowledge what the problem is, or just willfully choosing not to. Deny. It's pretty plain as day. What's more to say about it? We both just watched the same thing. We saw who couldn't handle the criticism, who couldn't handle being spoken to. when asked the question. It's quite something. Kind of the way antifa yells at people and makes them say Black Lives Matter while they're just trying to enjoy dinner at a restaurant. Oh, what freaking like Ben Garrison cartoon did you two roll out? They were just trying to enjoy their food and somebody said Black Lives Matter. Oh my goodness. Has all decency left society? You guys are a riot. Can you join me every show? Holy shit. Oh man. Yeah. I feel like after this show's done, I gotta like download the live stream and splice it and just like have the portion from when you guys arrived. Because honestly, before that, I feel like it really didn't pick up steam until you guys got here. So, you know, thank you for that. Oh man, I keep shaking the camera by banging on the table. Real thigh slapper. Oh, it's fantastic. Okay. Did I have anything else? I've already gone over the usual hour that I do, but yeah, like, you know, Steven Crowder also sells a shirt on his website that says socialism is for F blank GS. It's a picture of figs where the A is supposed to be. So it's not the derogatory term. It's figs. It's socialism is for figs. Isn't that really cute? That's not like some fourth grader would think of or anything. So it's, you know, it can't be hateful and, you know, juxtaposed next to all the multiple times that Steven Crowder has openly mocked gay people for being gay. But, you know, it isn't about that. It isn't about, you know, somebody's deep-seated insecurity. Somebody who obviously can't handle real criticism. Somebody who can't take it entirely. Like, the second he got shut down by this grown adult, he just completely devolved into what's that? Is that art or graffiti? Where at the beginning of that clip, he's going up to him like, "Oh, that's really beautiful. It's like such lovely work you're doing here," and trying to, like, you know, schmooze up to him to talk. And then, you know, the second it doesn't go his way, is that art or graffiti that you got there? He's like a pathetic high school bully, but maybe like he was too small in high school to like be a bully, so he like had to wait till he grew up. And then now that he's, I think Steven Crowder's my age. He's like 30 something. Now that he's there, he's just like, I'll show him now. I'm a big man. Force them to say that. Just bonkers. Well, if you actually talk to most people, do they really want socialism? Well, you know, I'll take that question seriously for a moment. In my experience, what people would define as socialism can vary greatly from person to person. And which is completely fair because it is a range of beliefs. There's different kinds of socialism. different ways of approaching it. So yeah, it really depends. A lot of people aren't thoroughly educated on the differences between those things, like what different kinds of socialism are and what that means. So yeah, it's extremely difficult to say. I've met people that claim to hate socialism, then proceed, when you get down to the nitty gritty, espouse socialist ideas. They just had no idea that they were socialist ideas. And then vice versa. People who state that they're socialists, and then once you start getting down to the conversation, their views don't necessarily reflect that either. So yeah, you get a wide variety of answers there, and it's that's part of why these things are so worth talking about. Well, see, that's just the thing, and that's demonstrative of why you're. They say to I don't think they do, because who wants a lot of people to die? Who wants all of their money to go to the state? Who would want that? In what system has it worked? See, that's demonstrative of just what I was talking about, where people are, like Tim Pool critiquing critical race theory and having no idea what it is. Stephen Crowder here trying to have some sort of talk that addresses racism, but has no idea how to. Here you are, attempting to criticize something I don't think you completely understand. It is not a system where just all the money goes to the state. That's not really like what the definition of socialism is. Like, I guess in a really loose way, it could be maybe part of an aspect of a type of socialism, but to represent the theory in that context is just false. It's absolutely false. I don't know what question you're referring to. It's kind of addressing the series of questions that you asked there. Actually, let me go back. Yeah, I'm going to go back to that tweet that I talked about with the Bosch Tim Pool debate. Particularly to the young people that might be watching. I would highly encourage you to watch a guy like Bosch. Good, intelligent socialist guy. He's quite funny. Probably get a kick out of him and maybe learn a thing or two along the way. But there's also the serfs, and I showed this tweet earlier in the show, where Bosch has taught Tim Pool's audience the basics of critical race theory, material analysis, class antagonism, systemic racism, systemic poverty, and the correlation of poverty and crime, and worker cooperatives. Even Tim Pool seems shocked to learn of some of these concepts. Incredible. So to the people watching, if you're not aware or have read about what those things are, you're probably not fit to have the conversation you think you want to have. Just saying. I personally would love to see more socialist values injected into this capitalist system, but ultimately, I would say that the end goal of that is to completely do away with capitalism as it relates to class and class antagonism, where you have the sequestering of wealth, you will ultimately have class, and you will ultimately have that kind of a divide. And how you structure a society like that is not as, it's not a simple conversation. But I would say, as a means of building a society that can look that way, eventually, more socialist structures work to our benefit, and it's reflective in our society when we do that. Well, the thing is, you're already paying for capitalism in a number of ways. I mean, if you want to approach it as who's paying for what, the surplus value of your labor and the work that you do, and the reason you as an employee are an employee and valuable to your employer is because they absorb the surplus value of your labor. That is their profit. If they were paying you the full amount of the money you generated for the company, or the money that you contributed through efficiency to that company, you would probably be making a lot more. Almost 30 to 50% more in a lot of cases. So you're essentially already paying for somebody else to have, certain luxuries earned off of your labor. That's something you're already doing. So, and there's nothing inherent in a communist or a socialist structure that would say you do not have freedom of speech. Those things are not intrinsic to each other by any means. Well, no, because where you have smaller government, you have less regulation. And where you have less regulation, when profit is the incentive, compromises are made. Think of it in the sense of a restaurant, and you don't have a health inspector because small government. Now you don't have a, any kind of social health program or any kind of collegiate authority that makes sure that you don't die because somebody else wanted to save a few bucks by serving you spoiled meat. If it goes against the state, then it doesn't fly. Exactly. I'm not sure what point you're trying to make. But yes, there it is. If it goes against the state, then it doesn't fly. How is, again, if you're defending the system we have now, how is that different? Let alone everything else that's wrong with that line. How is it different from now? It would be my first question. Yeah, but people won't go to that restaurant, right? Do you think it's good for a localized economy to have unsuccessful businesses opening and closing, occupying property, occupying space, and then have it not generating anything within the community? Is that valuable? So having no standard and allowing X number of people to get sick and possibly die is an acceptable outcome if you can pay less in taxes. I mean, if that's the argument you want to present, I think it already defeats itself. So, I mean, the invisible hand of the free market, that's just, it's fairy tale stuff. It's it's God's watching over me and everything will be okay. The invisible hand will save us. It's fairy tales for adults. I mean, there's been tons of social experiments on that too. If you want to talk about like laissez-faire capitalism, neoliberalism, complete deregulation, that has been tried a multitude of times by the Chicago School of Economics and I believe Milton Friedman. He was kind of the granddaddy of that whole project. He, through the CIA, through several coups in South America, so like, American empire overthrowing foreign government, and then installed military dictatorships that then imposed the Chicago School of Economics theories upon them, which was indeed laissez-faire capitalism. It resulted in tons of working people and laborers and labor organizers to be killed en masse. It tanked their economies to the point that they had to accept support from the International Monetary Fund. And if you're not familiar with what happens to a country when they accept favor from the from the International Monetary Fund, they essentially have to give up all their profit centers and resources, if they haven't already. So if there's anything that's, property of that country that could be used as, collateral, the IMF just simply takes it. Because what are you going to do about it is basically the response there. So yeah, the kind of ideas that you're espousing have not only been tried, but gotten significant support and backing. And it's a system that, through their various experiments, it crashed in on itself time and time again. A microcosm of that would be the Great Depression of the 1920s. See, the Great Depression in the 1920s was again caused by a lack of market regulation. When markets are kind of unwieldy things, if you don't have certain types of regulation in order to keep a certain sense of stability, the bubbles swelling and bursting and things rising and crashing become very drastic and very volatile. It's hard to run an economy that way. Hard to maintain jobs that way. And then the markets crash. So no, free market capital is a fairy tale in every measurable possible way. No, I don't think bailouts are a good thing. I think bailouts are the natural cause of capitalism. Capitalism depends on socialistic ideas in order to maintain itself. Once that market crash happens, if you want to get things rolling again, you got to inject public funds in it. And now you're taking something of a socialistic approach to solving the problem, except it's not the common person that's paid into that system that's receiving the benefit of it. It's a corporation. That the only benefit you might get is maybe your job doesn't completely disappear. But those guys are getting millions, billions, and then not having to pay a shred of taxes for it. knowing that all the money that they just got from the government that's lying in their pockets was not theirs, it was yours, and they're laughing about it. Yeah, I don't know what you're saying exactly about that. Like, that wouldn't be a point that is. Well, yeah. Yeah, in a lot of ways, you should have left him to drown. But the more intelligent thing to do would be, rather than a government bailout, is the government would just simply buy the company. They gave them more than enough money to possibly do that in a lot of cases anyway. And just like what the IMF does, and as I was describing, to what the IMF has done to several countries around the world as a result of military coups. Hey, you want some of our money? Well, it's going to come with some serious conditions. And one of those serious conditions is we now own the largest stake in your company, or the majority of it, or it in its completion. We own your company. You no longer get to run it. You're not getting the bonuses anymore. You're not going to get to extract any bonuses from our government money because we just bought your company. That's what should have happened. No, that wouldn't be wasting tax dollars, because people in this structure and how the things currently work still need to go to work. They still need to have jobs. You still need to have buying and selling and product moving. So when the government buys those companies, they're able to do that. The company doesn't disappear. Jobs don't disappear. You get to keep the market running and the economy running so it benefits the maximum amount of people without having to shut anything down or wasting the money. I don't think you understood the part what I just said about people not being able to feed themselves. I mean, I'd be a lot more open to allowing companies to completely crash and burn and not be bought out by the government if we had a guaranteed income, that no matter who you are, what you do, if you work or if you don't, you make more than enough money per year to survive. The state should be in control of our money because they're already in control of your money. The reason money has value is because you can pay your taxes with it. That's literally the reason your money has value, is because the government says it does. And why does the government say your money has value? It's because you can pay your taxes with it. That's how money works. Welcome to Fiat 101. Yeah, a new structure could emerge. And what do you think I, as a socialist, would be advocating for? You're just speculating a new structure, like what you're saying. Oh, a new structure would just emerge. Magic would just happen. Fairy tales and rainbows. I'm a big fan of fairy tales, rainbows, and unicorns. Huge fan. But when we're talking about, things that exist in the real world and affect people's lives, I have a tendency not to put so much faith in those concepts, personally. No, you evidently don't, because you're just coming up with these kind of fairy tale ideas. I don't think you know much about what you're talking about. Google something real quick so I can explain something to you. Okay. So you referring to specifically when the US dollar was decoupled from gold? Is that what you're referring to? Because then that would kind of make sense. My friend, that's not a gotcha. You mean a fairy tale like socialism? Ha got you now. That doesn't mean anything. Like, I understand in your head that probably sounded like really cool. But that doesn't mean anything. So I don't know. Yeah, because I was going to say, like, the fiat system, like, existed before that, like the concept of banknotes, representative money, and, you know, things like that. It's been around for a long time. You know, I just, like, I want you to know that saying it's a fairy tale without anything to back it up, you know, how I had, like, an explanation and then historical, you know, evidence. That's sort of what makes a good point. A bumper sticker slogan doesn't. So, I don't know. This is why you shouldn't listen to guys like Steven Crowder, because they actually don't know anything. They are colorful, jangling keys. It's amusing, but, you know, you're not really getting anything out of it, you know. All right, so yeah, so what? Like, I know, it's like I just said, it's been around for a long time. If you're just trying to kind of put your dick out about, I know about money history, I don't care. You're like really boring. So yeah, I don't know. I would advise that you find a way to be more interesting. Expand your horizons, as you so love to say. You know, take advantage of that free speech stuff, and listen to some voices that you normally wouldn't, because I am getting the distinct impression that your frame of view of things is rather narrow. Yeah, okay, that's great. You can keep talking your fiat facts all you like. I know that my line about Fiat 101, I guess, hurt your feelings. But yeah, in case you haven't noticed, during this discussion, I've been referencing historical fact, things you can verify, things you could easily find out and say, yes, he was telling the truth about that. That was an accurate statement. you have been like, well, what if a new system emerged? Did you ever think of that? It's just not a very good understanding of things. It's not a 3D image, you know? So I would challenge you to try and expand your horizons a little bit more, understand a little bit more about different political theory, and, it could probably really benefit you because you might have a passion for these things. Maybe that's why you're here, is social issues and social mechanisms is something that's of a great concern to you. Maybe you just haven't gotten all the right ideas about it. Well, you can always make it a weekly thing. I mean, you're free to join us every week and have your questions and comments. I may not address them as thoroughly as I have with you here today. It's just sort of a special occasion, I guess, that, I'll have this type of conversation with you, essentially. But yeah, I would encourage that you listen every week. And listen to people who are not Steven Crowder, because they are actively misinforming you. And they make a lot of money off of doing it. There's lots of great independent media out there that is certainly not CNN, that is trustworthy. Steven Crowder is not one of them. A lot of people don't necessarily watch live. That's okay. Yeah. Don't necessarily need anything. Like I said, you're free to join every week. I love the enthusiasm. You just you hang in there, Tiger. But yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about different topics on a week-to-week basis. Another fun fact. For some reason, seemed very concerned before the show that I was going to slander people. It's not something I do. But I would have you know that slander of a minor is not really like a crime. I just hope you know that. I know you're trying to say that that's what I was planning on doing, but that's not really how laws work. So just wanted to give you that tidbit of knowledge on that one. Well, that's it for the topics today. I think I'll just close it at libertarian free market ideas are patently silly and don't make any sense for anyone's personal benefit outside of maybe a few people who already own a lot of land and capital. And again, the only reason money is worth anything is because governments say it does and then charge you taxes. That is inherently what gives any country's currency its value. That's it. So, yeah, the whole idea that, what if we just didn't pay taxes for anything? Well, you then know less about how markets work than your words would at least attempt to reflect. That's what I would have to say about that. Anyway, I've gone on with this particular episode a little bit longer than I normally do. So I'm just going to... Here, there we go. Got to have the theme music to play us out. And of course, don't forget, the president of Antifa, the one that signs my checks, this duck. All hail Antifa duck, for he is our Lord and Master. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all. Especially the free market capitalists that have graced our comment section today. We are going to be back next week, I think. I have a lot of stuff coming up. November 11th, the new song drops. Check that out. Keep your eyes and ears open for that. Lots of cool stuff happening around that. I'm hoping to put together a live stream show of the live music. And I want it to sound really, really good. And I want to do it properly. So that's something I'm looking forward to doing. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about on next week's show. It's always a rough report. And that's kind of why the show is called that. You get it? The rough report. Yeah, so November 11th, the new song, Selvage. It's coming out. I'm doing the music plug. Like, share, subscribe, ding the little bell on YouTube. Do all the things. And help this show grow and expand. And we'll have some fun while we're doing it. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm going with. I hope this was informative. We're definitely going to be doing more bits on the hilarious and ridiculous right-wing figures of the internet. Digging into those guys is it's just a great way to demonstrate that their ideas are terrible. So yeah, thank you so much once again for joining us on the Rough Report. And you have yourself a really good rest there, guys. You valiant effort.